There are so many different pencils of so many different price points, and it's generally believed that the more expensive they are, the better they are. Well, today I'll be comparing some cheap graphite pencils against some more expensive pencils to see if I can save you some money. And to find out, can they really compete against the expensive competition? So these Artline pencils are the cheapest graphite pencils I've ever used, and today we're going to put them up against this pack of Faber Castell pencils that cost about 3 times as much. The left side will be drawn with the Artlines, and the right side will be the Faber Castells. So we'll start with the Artlines. Now this pack only has 6 pencils, but they range from HB to 10B, so I shouldn't have too many problems with getting a good variety of shades. The lighter tones might be a little tricky, but this drawing is mostly dark tones, and a HB used very lightly is typically good enough to get some nice light tones anyway. I started with the background, and immediately these pencils felt nice. Graphite seems quite easy to get right, so I'm not exactly sure what a bad graphite pencil is supposed to feel or draw like. I've never used a graphite pencil that felt dodgy or unusable to me, but these feel really good. Moving on to the hair, and we basically want it as dark as possible for the most part. This will result in huge amounts of shine, but then that's pretty normal for graphite. Most of these shades are just basic block tones or soft gradients, but that lets me feel how smooth they are, and also lets me try out the 10B. This is the first time I've used a Graphite 10B. The other sets I normally use stop at 8 and 9B, so it'll be interesting to see if it makes any noticeable difference. I've had different sets of pencils where the grades don't necessarily match up with each other, so for instance the 14B in a pack of carbon pencils I have didn't really look much darker than the 8B I had in a different pack, so you could be forgiven for thinking they've slapped 10B on this to make it seem more impressive. But fair's fair, the tone is looking just that little bit darker than the usual 8 and 9Bs I use. I've used some cheaper colouring pencils in the past, and they often feel really difficult to use. The end results were nice, but I almost felt like I had to wrestle with them to get the good results. I don't feel like I have to wrestle with these at all, they just feel like good graphite pencils. Working on some highlights on the left side of her hair using my mechanical eraser. Again, these pencils gave me no issues. They erased nicely and allowed me to get a nice range of highlights. And this last big chunk here is showing how good they were at getting a really nice consistent dark tone. I was really impressed by how dark they went. And they sharpened nicely as well. Another downside I've found with cheap pencils is the wood they use and the paint on the barrel can often gum up sharpeners and make the sharpener stutter a bit. I feel like this can cause pressure on the tip and cause more frequent breaking, and if the wood's poor quality it can break off and leave parts of the core with less protection. But these sharpened really well. It felt a tiny bit stuttery at first, but that's just me being picky. They got a nice sharp point which was really easy to use for the finer details, and to give a little spoiler, I didn't suffer any lead breaking from either pack of pencils during this drawing, so top marks all around on that front. Now onto the face, and because of the dark tones in the hair and the contrast I knew I could get, I was really looking forward to this, and it mostly went off without any problems. When I first drew in the freckles I made them too dark. My fault, not the pencils, but I could easily tone them down with my eraser and make them look a bit more subtle. But other than that, the face went as smoothly as it could. They feel a little softer than the Faber Castells, and the tip feels a bit thicker. When I use them they feel more comparable to the Derwents that I often use rather than the Faber Castells. Which isn't a problem, because the Derwents are also amazing. They were easy to work with, and I never struggled to get any of the tones that I needed. Another little added bonus is that the paint on the barrel of these pencils is listed as being child safe. Still probably best to avoid eating them, but for an art tool that looks like it's marketed at kids, it's a nice safety feature. With that being said, I think saying these are purely marketed for kids is doing the pencils a disservice. They feel really well made and the results so far have been excellent. But what about the colour? We mentioned earlier that the colour could be potentially tricky due to the HB pencil possibly being too dark to get the lighter tones I needed. But as you can see here, it worked out fine on pretty much the whole colour. I had to go pretty light in some areas, and I'm certain that if I used these regularly there'd be some drawings where it just didn't go as light as I needed. But I do also have to admit to a little bit of cheating. On this tiny area of her collar I didn't actually use the pencil, I shaded it in with the dirty blending stump to give me a slightly lighter tone, which is something I do pretty regularly with my drawings, and then lightened it up even more with a mechanical eraser, which I also do a lot. I felt like these pencils would have struggled to get me this exact tone, but considering how tiny of a part this is in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to mark them down for it, especially when my solution was a solution I use frequently with other graphite pencils as well. I'll just say that I do think adding a H pencil to this set would be pretty helpful, just to help cover most of the lighter tones I sometimes use. but they probably wanted to keep it to just 6 pencils, and so presumably it's either the H or the 10B, which brings up an interesting debate. I think for the stage I'm at now, with the tools I use, an H would have been more helpful, simply because I don't really use graphite for my dark tones anymore. I typically use carbon pencils for the really dark parts, which makes the 10B graphite pencil a little bit less useful. But then that's not the point of this comparison, and honestly, if I was limiting myself to just one pack of graphite pencils and had to keep it to 6 pencils and I had to choose between an H or the 10B, I think I'd probably choose the 10B. It's not too much darker than the 8B, it does have just that little bit of extra dark consistency, which can really help add to the overall contrast of the drawing. But all in all, as we come to the end of this half of the drawing, these pencils are amazing. The feel, the quality, the end result, all for less than £1 a pencil. They're incredible. So now we've finished the first half, we're going to move on to the Faber Castells. I used these on half of a drawing of Leon Kennedy that I did recently, and they were great. But I gotta be honest and say after seeing the quality of the art lines, I'm not really expecting to see too much difference here. I imagine a lot of the difference will be in how they feel, but to be honest, the art lines felt great too. So the Faber Castells are going to have to pull out something big if they want to set themselves apart from the cheaper competition. Starting with the hair again, this is the perfect opportunity to see if there's any significant difference between the Faber Castell 8B and the Artline 10B, or if they're pretty much the same. The pack of Faber Castells I'm using has 12 pencils ranging from 2H to 8B. It's a great range that can get you a huge variety of tones. I think it's a shame that it tops out at an 8B when some other brands can go up to 9B, and even a 10B with the art lines. But then much like with the art lines earlier, that's just me being picky. Moving on to the face, and it all goes smoothly like I thought it would. They lay down nicely, they blend smoothly, they're not scratchy, they're great pencils. Some people can have difficulties with graphite pencils scratching their artwork. I think it's to do with the clay that they add to the graphite to make the pencil. Sometimes the clay can be in a bit of a lump, which I think is what causes the scratchiness. I've had these issues with some graphite pencils in the past. I've mostly used Derwents over the last 13 years or so, and I've experienced a decent amount of scratchiness, but it's never damaged or ruined the drawing for me. It probably would if I kept trying to draw with the scratchy part, but I can easily fix it by rubbing the scratchy part on a scrap piece of paper until I feel it wear down and go smooth again. It didn't happen with either of these pencils during this drawing, but then in fairness to the Derwents, I've used them consistently for over a decade, whereas this is the first drawing I've used the art lines on and the second I've used the Faber Castells on, so it's not a very fair comparison. But it seems worth mentioning that it hasn't happened with either of the pencils on this drawing. The wider range of pencils were nice, I have to admit. I probably would have managed okay with the art lines, but the lighter pencils in the Faber Castell set made it feel like a much easier process. Just a quick reminder to say if this video is helping you and you'd like to see more, remember to like and subscribe to keep up to date with future uploads. So I'm working my way through the rest of the drawing, and to be honest I'm really struggling to see any difference. And I've got to say, after using both of them for a while on this drawing, there's really not much difference between how they feel on the paper. The Faber Castells maybe feel a little bit firmer, the sharp point feels like it lasts a tiny bit longer, which is helpful for the intricate details, but again I'm having to be really picky to find differences between these pencils. It's worth mentioning that although there's a decent price difference between these two packs, the Faber Castells have twice as many pencils. If I halved the price of the Faber Castells, there'd only be a £2 difference. However, it brings up an interesting question. Do you really need pencils in every grade? The art lines have a HB and then 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10B, and those pencils cover all the tones from the missing grades in between. For instance, the art lines don't have a 5B and the Faber Castells do, but I can achieve the same tones as a 5B using a 4B with more pressure or a 6B with less pressure. So it could be argued that by giving you more pencils, Faber Castell are actually making you pay for more than you need. However, on that same train of thought, if you can get the same tones with multiple different pencils, it could also be argued that Faber Castell are kind of giving you duplicates, meaning your pencils last longer and you don't need to buy replacements as often. If your 5B gets too small, you can get the same tones with a 4B or 6B, maybe even a 3B and 7B, which are other grades the art lines don't have. But then if you buy 2 packs of the art lines, you're also getting duplicates for each pencil, and the price would still be less than 1 pack of the Faber Castells. However, the Faber Castells go down to 2H, which is incredibly helpful for the lighter tones. Now I know this can make it seem really complicated when trying to figure out which of these is technically the better product or the smarter purchase, but I guess the important conclusion is actually kind of simple. They're both great pencils and they're very well matched. If you're looking for the pencils with a wider range of tones, the Faber Castells might be just what you're looking for, but if you're looking to draw on a bit more of a budget and looking for graphite pencils that are affordable but fantastic quality, the art lines are incredible and I think they'll cover the majority of tones that you'd want to achieve. There's a variety of different ways you can compare pencils, but at the end of the day, they both feel great, and as you can see here, you can't really argue with the results. Regardless of what you might be after or what you might want from your pencils, maybe you like the affordable simplicity or you like a wider range, I think the Artlines might honestly be the best all-round graphite pencils I've ever used. They give a nice big range of tones, great quality, they sharpen almost just as easily as the Faber Castells, and they're more affordable. I was hoping the Artlines would be good, but I'm honestly stunned by just how good they actually are. They look almost identical to the Faber Castells. And here's the finished image. I'm amazed by the end results. I think if I showed this drawing to someone without any context, they'd never guess that I use two different types of pencils. I think both sides look great. But now we've finished the drawing and we can see the whole picture. Tell me what you think. Can you see a difference? Will you be trying out the Artlines? Let me know down below. And now that you've got an idea on what graphite pencils you'd like, check this video out up in the top right corner to see why carbon pencils might be the perfect next addition to your black and white drawing toolbox. I hope this video helped, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.